The moment William Tucker stepped into his brother's backyard, the aroma of grilled meat wafting through the air, he was certain this would be just another tedious family gathering he had to endure. As the CEO of Tucker Architectural Designs, one of the country's leading architectural firms, he was used to commanding boardrooms and negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts, not making small talk over hot dogs and beer. But his brother Matt had insisted, and William had reluctantly agreed, unaware that his life was about to change forever. "Will, you made it," Matt called out, waving a spatula in one hand while balancing a plate of raw burger patties in the other. His face was flushed from the heat of the grill, his typical easygoing smile firmly in place. William adjusted his designer sunglasses and forced a smile. "Wouldn't miss it," he lied, scanning the backyard filled with Matt's friends, mostly contractors and construction workers he'd met through his job as a general contractor. Nobody William would typically socialize with. "You need to loosen up," Matt said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Have a beer. Meet some people. Stop looking like you're at a board meeting." William sighed, accepting the cold bottle Matt pressed into his hand. "I have 3 project proposals to review tonight. They can wait," Matt insisted. "Oh, there's Jake. Jake, come meet my uptight brother." William turned, prepared to endure another introduction, when his eyes landed on the woman standing beside Jake. She was laughing at something Jake had said, her head tilted back slightly, exposing the graceful line of her neck. Her curly auburn hair caught the sunlight, creating a halo effect that momentarily stunned him. "Will, this is my buddy Jake from the Henderson Project, and this is Abigail Keating, Jake's friend. She's a landscape architect." Abigail turned those laughing eyes toward William, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you. Matt talks about you all the time." "All good things, I hope," William replied automatically, surprised by the warmth of her hand and the slight calluses he felt there, the hands of someone who didn't just design gardens but worked in them too. "Mostly complaints about how you never show up to his barbecues," she teased, her eyes twinkling. "I'm beginning to think you're mythical." William found himself smiling genuinely this time. "Well, I'm glad I could dispel that particular myth." Jake excused himself to help Matt with the grill, leaving William alone with Abigail. He expected the awkward silence that usually descended when he was left with strangers, but Abigail seemed perfectly at ease. "So, the famous William Tucker. Your firm designed the Riverside Cultural Center, right? I loved the integration with the surrounding landscape. The terraced gardens were inspired." William raised an eyebrow, impressed. Most people only commented on the building itself, not the environmental integration. "You know your architecture. Landscape architecture is my life," she said, sipping her drink. "I spend more time thinking about how buildings interact with their surroundings than most people spend thinking about anything. And here I thought you were just another one of my brother's construction friends." Abigail laughed. "I'm actually here by complete chance. Jake's truck broke down on the way and I was giving him a ride. Matt invited me to stay." "Lucky breakdown," William said, surprising himself with the comment. "For me or for you?" she challenged, a slight smile playing on her lips. Before William could answer, Matt called everyone to eat. As they moved toward the tables laden with food, William found himself gravitating toward Abigail throughout the afternoon. Their conversation flowed effortlessly from work to travel, to books they'd both read. It was refreshing to talk to someone who didn't know or care about his net worth or company valuation. Later, as the evening wore on and people began to leave, William found himself reluctant to go. Abigail was helping Matt clean up, laughing at something his brother said, and William felt an unfamiliar twinge in his chest. He hadn't laughed like that in years. "Need a hand?" he offered, approaching them. Matt nearly dropped the plate he was holding. "Will Tucker offering to help clean?" "Are you feeling okay?" Abigail nudged Matt. "Be nice. Your brother's not as stuffy as you made him out to be." "I'm plenty stuffy," William said with mock seriousness. "I have a reputation to maintain." "Your secret's safe with me," Abigail whispered conspiratorially. I won't tell anyone you actually know how to have fun." As they cleaned up together, William found himself stealing glances at Abigail. There was something about her that intrigued him, her confidence, her intelligence, the way she seemed completely comfortable in her own skin. When Jake announced he was leaving and Abigail prepared to go with him, William felt an unexpected panic. "It was nice meeting you, William," she said, extending her hand again. "You too." He hesitated, then added, "I'm working on a new development that could use a landscape architect's perspective. Would you be interested in consulting?" Her eyes widened slightly. "Are you offering me a job?" "A professional consultation," he clarified, "to start with." A slow smile spread across her face. "Sure, here's my card." As she walked away, Matt appeared at his shoulder. "Smooth, bro, very smooth." "It's a legitimate business proposal," William protested. Matt grinned. "You know, when I invited you today, I never expected you'd actually find someone interesting, and definitely not Jake's friend." William watched Abigail's car disappear down the street. "Neither did I," he admitted quietly. The next morning, William sat in his corner office overlooking the city, Abigail's business card in his hand. Keating Landscape Design, it read, with a simple green leaf logo. He'd spent an embarrassing amount of time the night before looking up her company online, impressed by the portfolio of work displayed on her website. His assistant, Caroline, knocked on his door. "Your 9 o'clock is here, Mr. Tucker." "Thank you," he said, slipping the card into his pocket. "And Caroline, could you please reach out to Keating Landscape Design? I'd like to schedule a consultation for the Westfield project." Caroline raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Of course, sir." 3 days later, William found himself sitting across from Abigail in a small cafe near her office. She'd suggested meeting here instead of at his office, claiming she thought better with caffeine and pastries at hand. She looked different today, more professional in tailored pants and a blouse, her hair pulled back, but her eyes still had that same sparkle. "So, tell me about this project," she said, spreading out the preliminary sketches he'd brought. For the next hour, they discussed the Westfield development, a mixed-use space that included residential units, office space, and public areas. William found himself genuinely interested in her ideas, which were innovative and thoughtful. "The problem with most urban developments," she was saying, "is that they treat green space as an afterthought. But if you integrate it from the beginning, you create a more harmonious environment. People need nature, even in the middle of a city." "I couldn't agree more," William said, surprised to find that he meant it. "That's exactly the approach I was hoping for." Abigail sat back, studying him. "You know, you're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Matt described you as this ruthless business tycoon who cared more about profit margins than people." William winced. "He's not entirely wrong. I can be focused." "Focused is good," she said, "but so is seeing the bigger picture." She tapped the sketches. "This project could be something special, something that improves people's lives, not just your bottom line." There was no judgment in her voice, just a simple statement of fact. William felt something shift inside him. When was the last time someone had challenged him like this? Not as William Tucker, CEO, but as a person with the power to make a difference. "I'd like to hire you," he said suddenly. "Not just as a consultant. I want Keating Landscape Design as the official landscape architects for the Westfield project." Abigail's eyes widened. "That's a big project for a small firm like mine." "You can handle it," he said with certainty. "I've seen your portfolio. You're exactly what this project needs." She bit her lip, considering. "I'd need to hire more staff, and the timeline, we can work out the details," he assured her. "What do you say?" A slow smile spread across her face. "I say yes, but on one condition." "What's that?" "You let me show you what I'm thinking in person, this weekend. There's a botanical garden upstate that has elements I want to incorporate." William hesitated. His weekends were usually reserved for catching up on work or attending business functions. But something about the way Abigail looked at him made it impossible to say no. "It's a date," he said, then quickly corrected himself. "A business meeting, I mean." "Right," Abigail agreed, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. A business meeting. The botanical garden was a revelation. As Abigail led William through various sections, explaining her vision for similar elements in the Westfield project, he found himself seeing plants and spaces in a way he never had before. She spoke of ecosystems and microclimates, of how certain plants supported local wildlife, how water features could be both beautiful and functional. "This is my favorite spot," she said, leading him to a secluded corner where a small stream flowed over rocks into a pond filled with lily pads. The afternoon sun filtered through tall trees, creating dappled light patterns on the water. "It's beautiful," William admitted, watching a dragonfly skim across the water's surface. "When I was a kid," Abigail said softly, "my parents would take me to places like this. My father was a high school science teacher, and he'd point out every plant, every insect, explaining how they all worked together. That's when I fell in love with the natural world." William glanced at her, surprised by the personal revelation. "My father only took me to construction sites. He founded the company I run now. To him, nature was just something to be cleared away to make room for buildings." "And what about you? What do you think?" He considered the question seriously. "I used to think the same way, but lately I've been wondering if there's a better approach. Especially after seeing your work." Abigail smiled, and William felt that strange twinge in his chest again. They continued walking, and somehow their conversation shifted from work to more personal topics. He learned that she had started her company 5 years ago after working for a larger firm where her ideas were constantly sidelined. She told him about her struggle to be taken seriously as a young female business owner in a male-dominated industry. In turn, he found himself sharing things he rarely talked about: the pressure of taking over his father's company at 28 when the older man had a heart attack, the loneliness of being at the top, how sometimes he missed the days when he was just a junior architect, creating rather than managing. By the time they stopped for a late lunch at the Gardens Cafe, William realized he'd talked more to Abigail in one day than he had to anyone in months. "Thank you for today," he said as they waited for their food. "I'm seeing the Westfield project in a completely new light." "That's what I was hoping for," she replied. "Sometimes you need to step away from the blueprints to really understand what you're building." Their food arrived, and as they ate, William found himself studying Abigail, the way she gestured with her hands when she was excited about an idea. The small furrow that appeared between her brows when she was thinking deeply. The way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just thinking about the project." But he wasn't thinking about the project at all. Over the next few weeks, as Keating Landscape Design officially joined the Westfield development team, William found more and more reasons to schedule meetings with Abigail. They worked well together, their styles complementing each other in unexpected ways. Her creativity balanced his practicality. His resources enabled her vision. The rest of his team noticed the change in him. Caroline commented that he seemed more relaxed. His project managers appreciated his new openness to innovative ideas. Even his brother Matt, when they met for their monthly dinner, remarked on it. "You seem different," Matt said, studying him over their steaks. "Less robotic," William rolled his eyes. "Thanks for that assessment. It's a compliment," Matt insisted. "And I think I know why. Jake mentioned that you and Abigail are working together." William carefully cut a piece of his steak. "Her firm is handling the landscape design for Westfield." And that's all it is, just business?" "What else would it be?" William asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Matt grinned. "Come on, Will. I saw how you looked at her at the barbecue, and now you're working together. That's not a coincidence. She's extremely talented," William said defensively. "It makes perfect business sense to hire her." "I'm sure it does," Matt agreed, still smiling. "But admit it, you like her." William sighed. There was no point denying it to Matt, who had an uncanny ability to read him despite their different personalities. "Fine, I find her interesting," Matt repeated. That's will speak for I'm completely smitten but too stubborn to admit it. I am not smitten, William protested, though the word had crossed his mind more than once. Then you won't mind if Jake asks her out, he's been thinking about it. William nearly choked on his water. Jake, but I thought they were just friends. They are. But Jake's always had a thing for her, just never made a move. Now he's thinking it's time. The thought of Abigail dating Jake or anyone else created a hollow feeling in William's stomach. She can date whoever she wants, he said stiffly. It's none of my business. Matt shook his head. For a smart guy, you can be really stupid sometimes. If you like her, do something about it before someone else does. The conversation haunted William for days afterward. He found himself distracted in meetings, his thoughts drifting to Abigail. Was Matt right? Should he do something about it? But what if she didn't feel the same way? What if it ruined their working relationship? The Westfield project was too important to jeopardize over personal feelings. Then again, what if Jake asked her out and she said yes? The thought was still troubling him when he arrived at the Westfield site for a walkthrough with the project team. Abigail was already there, dressed in practical clothes with her hair pulled back under a hard hat, discussing something with one of her employees. When she saw William, her face lit up with a smile that made his heart race. Perfect timing, she called out. We were just discussing the rain garden placement. The walkthrough proceeded smoothly, with Abigail explaining her vision for each section of the property. William found himself continually impressed by her knowledge and passion. The other team members clearly respected her expertise, even the older men who had initially seemed skeptical of the young female landscape architect. As the group moved ahead to the next area, William and Abigail fell slightly behind. Your team is doing excellent work, he said. The preliminary designs are even better than I'd hoped. Thanks to your support, she replied. Not many developers would give us this much freedom. Not many landscape architects would make such compelling arguments for sustainability features, she laughed. Are you saying I wore you down? You convinced me, he corrected. There's a difference. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before William gathered his courage. Abigail, I was wondering if Miss Keating, one of her employees called, interrupting. We need your input on the irrigation system. Abigail gave William an apologetic look. Duty calls. Rain, check on that thought, he nodded, watching her hurry away, annoyed at himself for hesitating. That evening, William was working late in his office when his phone rang. Seeing Abigail's name on the screen, he answered immediately. William, I'm so sorry to call after hours, but there's a problem with the soil analysis at Westfield. The results just came in, and we've got contamination issues in the eastern section. How bad? He asked, immediately shifting into problem-solving mode. Bad enough that we need to adjust our plans. I've been working on alternative approaches, but I'd like to go over them with you as soon as possible. I can meet you first thing tomorrow, he offered. Actually, she hesitated. I'm still at my office. If you're not busy, we could go over it tonight. William glanced at the clock. It was nearly 9. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Keating Landscape Design operated out of a converted warehouse in an up-and-coming district of the city. When William arrived, most of the lights were off except for one section in the back. He found Abigail surrounded by papers and soil samples, her hair escaping from its ponytail, a smudge of something on her cheek. Thank you for coming, she said, looking up. I know it's late. It's important, he replied simply. Show me what we're dealing with. For the next hour, they pored over the soil reports and discussed alternatives. The contamination meant rethinking a significant portion of the landscape plan, but Abigail had already developed several options. Her quick thinking and adaptability impressed William yet again. This one is my preferred approach, she said, pointing to a revised plan. It's more expensive, but it's the most environmentally responsible. We'd remediate the soil properly rather than just capping it. William studied the proposal and the associated costs. It would add to the budget, but she was right, it was the better approach for the long term. Let's do it, he decided. I'll adjust the budget. Abigail's eyes widened. Just like that, most clients would insist on the cheapest solution. I'm not most clients, he said with a small smile. And this isn't just any project. No, she agreed softly. It isn't. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, William forgot about soil contamination and budget adjustments. All he could think about was how beautiful Abigail looked, even exhausted and disheveled after a long day. You have something on your face, he said, gesturing to her cheek. Oh, she rubbed at it, missing the spot entirely. Did I get it? Without thinking, William reached across the table and gently wiped the smudge away with his thumb. Her skin was soft under his touch, and she went very still, her eyes never leaving his. There, he said, his voice lower than he intended. All gone. Thank you, she whispered. Neither of them moved. The office was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of traffic outside. William knew he should pull back, maintain professionalism, but he couldn't bring himself to move. Abigail, he began, I've been wanting to ask you something? Yes. Her voice was barely audible. Would you have dinner with me, not to discuss work, just dinner? A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Are you asking me on a date, William Tucker? Yes, he admitted. I am. Then yes, she replied, her smile widening. I'd like that very much. The relief and happiness that flooded through him was unlike anything he'd felt before. Tomorrow night, she nodded. Tomorrow sounds perfect. As they gathered up the paperwork and prepared to leave, William felt lighter somehow, as if a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had been lifted. When they reached the parking lot, he walked her to her car, reluctant for the evening to end despite the late hour. Thank you again for coming, she said, unlocking her door. Not many CEOs would rush over at 9 at night to discuss soil remediation. Not many landscape architects would care enough to call, he countered. That's what makes you special. The words slipped out before he could stop them, but the pleased blush that colored her cheeks made him glad he'd said it. Good night, William, she said softly. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night, Abigail. As he drove home, William couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business. Their first date was at a small, family-owned Italian restaurant that William had discovered years ago, but rarely had time to visit. Abigail arrived in a simple green dress that brought out the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders. William, who had seen countless women in designer gowns at charity galas, thought she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. This place is lovely, she said as they were seated in a cozy corner booth. How did you find it? It was my mother's favorite, he explained. Before she passed away, she used to bring me and Matt here for special occasions. The owners still remember her. As if on cue, an elderly man approached their table. William, it has been too long, my friend. Hello, Antonio, William greeted him warmly. This is Abigail. Abigail, Antonio has been feeding the Tucker family for 3 generations now. Any friend of William's is family here, Antonio declared. I will bring you my special dishes, yes. No menus needed. As Antonio bustled away, Abigail leaned forward. I've never seen this side of you before. The man who knows the restaurant owner by name and gets special off-menu items. William shrugged, slightly embarrassed. There are many sides to me you haven't seen yet. I'm looking forward to discovering them all, she said, her voice soft but certain. Dinner was magnificent, with Antonio bringing out course after course of exquisite food, each with a story about the dish's origins or when William's mother had first tried it. They talked for hours, moving from subject to subject with an ease that still surprised William. Abigail told him about her dreams for her company, how she wanted to change urban planning to make cities more livable and sustainable. In turn, he shared his own early passion for architecture, how he'd wanted to design buildings that would stand as works of art as well as functional spaces. How sometimes he missed being directly involved in the creative process instead of overseeing everything from a distance. Why don't you get more involved with the Westfield design? she asked. "It's your company. You can do whatever you want." William considered this. "I suppose I could. I've just been so focused on growing the business that I've neglected that part of myself." "It's never too late to reclaim your passion," she said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. The simple gesture sent warmth spreading through him. As they finished their dessert, a tiramisu that Antonio insisted was made from a secret family recipe, William realized he didn't want the evening to end. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked. "There's a nice path along the river just a block away." "I'd love to," she agreed. The night was clear and mild, the river reflecting the city lights. They walked close together, their hands occasionally brushing until William finally gathered his courage and took her hand in his. Abigail's fingers intertwined with his naturally, as if they had been designed to fit together. "Thank you for tonight," she said as they paused to look out over the water. "It's been a long time since I've enjoyed myself this much." "Me too," he admitted. "Work tends to take over everything." "We're both guilty of that," she said with a small laugh. "I can't remember the last time I went on a proper date." "Was this a proper date?" he asked, turning to face her. She looked up at him, moonlight reflecting in her eyes. "The most proper I've ever had." William couldn't have stopped himself if he tried. He leaned down, slowly enough to give her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Abigail rose up on her toes to meet him halfway, her lips soft against his in a kiss that was gentle at first, then deeper as she slid her arms around his neck. When they finally broke apart, William rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the day I met you at Matt's barbecue." "What took you so long?" she teased. "I was afraid it might complicate our working relationship." "And now?" "Now I'm thinking some complications are worth it," she smiled, the expression lighting up her entire face. "I couldn't agree more." Over the next few months, as summer turned to fall and the Westfield project progressed, William and Abigail's relationship deepened. They worked together professionally during the day, careful to maintain appropriate boundaries in front of their teams. But evenings and weekends belonged to them alone. William introduced Abigail to his world charity galas, business dinners, the high-powered social circles that came with being the CEO of a major firm. She navigated them with grace, charming his associates with her intelligence and authenticity. Several had even approached her about landscape projects of their own. In turn, Abigail brought William into her world community garden projects, sustainable living workshops, hiking trails where she taught him to identify native plants and understand ecological systems. He discovered a whole side of life he'd been missing, buried in spreadsheets and profit margins. Matt, of course, was insufferably smug about the whole thing. "I told you so," he said when William finally admitted they were seriously dating. "All it took was a barbecue to humanize the robot CEO." "Very funny," William retorted, though he couldn't really be annoyed. Matt had inadvertently changed his life by inviting him to that barbecue. "Jake's a bit bummed he missed his chance," Matt added, "but he says if anyone was going to win Abigail's heart, he's glad it was you. Says you're good for each other." William thought about this later as he watched Abigail presenting the updated Westfield landscape plans to the city council. She was in her element, passionate and articulate, explaining how the project would benefit the community. The council members were clearly impressed, asking thoughtful questions that she answered with confidence. As the meeting concluded with unanimous approval for their plans, William felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with business success. He was proud of her, of the work they were creating together, of the vision they shared for a better kind of development. "That went well," Abigail said as they left City Hall. "I think we've really got something special with Westfield." "We do," William agreed. "But that's not the only special thing in my life these days." She smiled, linking her arm through his as they walked to the car. "Careful, Mr. Tucker, people might start to think you're going soft." "Would that be so terrible?" he asked, only half joking. Abigail stopped walking and turned to face him. No, she said seriously. It would be wonderful. You've already changed so much since we met. You listen more, you consider more perspectives. Your team has noticed it too. Have I really changed that much? You've become more of who you always were beneath all those CEO layers, she said. More like the man who still visits his mother's favorite restaurant and knows the owner by name, more like the architect who wanted to create beautiful spaces, not just profitable ones. William pulled her close, right there on the steps of City Hall, not caring who might see. That's because of you. You make me want to be better. We make each other better, she corrected. That's how it should be. 6 months after that first barbecue, William and Abigail stood together at the Westfield groundbreaking ceremony. The project had evolved into something neither of them had initially envisioned, more integrated with the natural environment, more community-focused, yet still commercially viable. It had become a model that other developers were already seeking to emulate. As William delivered his speech to the assembled crowd of investors, city officials, and community members, he found his eyes continually drawn to Abigail, standing proudly at the front. The woman who had changed not just this project, but his entire perspective on what mattered in life. And so, he concluded, Westfield represents not just a new development for our city, but a new approach to urban spaces, one that values both prosperity and sustainability, both function and beauty. It's a vision I couldn't have achieved alone. His eyes met Abigail's. Sometimes the most important partnerships are the ones we never expected to find. Later that evening, as they celebrated privately in William's penthouse apartment with a bottle of champagne, he found himself thinking about the future not just of Westfield or Tucker architectural designs, but of the two of them together. What are you thinking about? Abigail asked, curled against him on the sofa. You've got that serious look again. I'm thinking about how different my life is now compared to a year ago, he said honestly. How different I am. Good different, she asked, the best different. He set down his champagne glass and took both her hands in his. Abigail, when I went to Matt's barbecue that day, I had no idea my brother's friend would change everything for me. You've made me see the world differently, not just buildings and landscapes, but people, relationships, what really matters. Her eyes widened as he slid off the sofa onto one knee before her, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. I know it's only been 6 months, he continued, but when something is this right, why wait? Abigail Keating, will you marry me? He opened the box to reveal a ring with a center diamond surrounded by small emeralds green like the gardens she loved to create. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, William Tucker, I will marry you. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, William felt a completeness he'd never known before. The man who had once measured success in profit margins and property portfolios now understood that the greatest achievement of his life was finding the woman who had shown him how to build not just structures, but a meaningful life. 1 year later, they were married in the central garden of the completed first phase of Westfield, a space that Abigail had designed with native plants and sustainable features. Matt was William's best man, teasing him mercilessly in his speech about how it had taken a barbecue and soil contamination for his workaholic brother to finally fall in love. As they danced under strings of lights with friends and family surrounding them, William held his wife close and whispered, "Thank you for changing my life." Abigail smiled up at him, her eyes reflecting the same joy he felt. We changed each other's lives. And now we get to build something beautiful together, not just projects, but a future. I can't think of a better partner to design it with, William said, before kissing the woman who had taught the CEO to see beyond the bottom line and find the heart in everything.